Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Jesse Jameson with Empowered Networks, and we're here to discuss the NetMRI end-of-life announcement that's been recently sent out to many of you. Here we wanted to discuss what that actually means as far as impacts to your business, as well as any potential questions that may be coming up along the way, and offer any solutions and options that might be available to you in the future. Joined today by Michael L. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Hi, I'm Michael L. with Empowered Networks. I'm SVP of Technical Services. Happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. And Adam Fox.
Hi, I'm Adam Fox. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect here with Empowered Networks, and I'm happy to be here as well.
Thank you, sir. So like I mentioned, the goal of the webinar is to discuss those the end-of-life announcement, as well as any questions that might be coming up. But to do that, we wanted to make sure that you had a very good understanding of exactly what it meant and some of the details around the actual end-of-life itself. So to start with, when we talk about an end-of-life announcement, people want to know, first of all, what products are actually affected and how does this impact us? Mr. L., did you want to take that one, sir?
Sure, yeah. So the product that we're talking about is NetMRI. It is the NCCM solution that Infoblox has had in the market for very many years, but it's finally coming to end of life. Some of the dates around that, specifically the announcement was made on October 10th, 2024, so just recently. The last order date that was set up, and that is the last date that you can order the product from Infoblox. That'll be in April 30th of 2025, so coming up early in the next year. The actual end of life, which coincides with the end of support for the product, will be April 30th as well, but in 2027.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. So what does that mean for the existing support and maintenance for the customers themselves?
Yeah, so what that means is existing support is going to be just as it was, and maintenance will be maintained. So one important message here is you're not being left alone. Infoblox is still going to be supporting the client base up until those dates and ensure that you're successful with your transition out of NetMRI.
Awesome. And as far as impacts to our existing customers, people that are using NetMRI on a daily basis, what do you think that's going to look like, Adam?
What it's really going to look like for them is it's going to be business as usual for the most part. With the ramp that we have with these announcements, it's going to allow our customers to take the time that's required to strategically navigate themselves to an NCCM solution that's going to meet their needs and requirements.
Awesome. Thank you. So we've talked a little bit about NetMRI, but again, what is NetMRI? How does it work in the environment? And what are some of the features that we might be leveraging today would be the next big question. So what are the functions of an NCCM, guys? Anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in there. And I think this is important because NCCM, we've been using the term, it's network config and change management. Really, it's a suite of capabilities that are pulled together to support that idea of doing change and configuration management for network devices. And the reason that it's important to understand what NCCM is made up of is because depending on the specific functionality that you may be using in NetMRI in order to provide in your environment, that may change the outcomes of how you want to move forward.
Understood. I think one of the big questions is, and a lot of customers are probably hearing this, they probably have a license or something that says NetMRI on it, so they're familiar that this has some impact on them, but they may not even know exactly what they're using NetMRI for. Are there ways that we can help them with that, or suggestions that you have around that?
Yes, definitely. Currently, there's of course, there's going to be your tribal knowledge, which your team believes they're using it for. But more importantly, Empowered Networks, we've developed a specific tool to help them suss out the use cases that NetMRI is actually doing. This is an extremely lightweight process, and we're actually able to help you in that as well. So usually it would take a client between 10 to 30 minutes. What it involves is simply downloading a piece of software. It's going to interrogate your NetMRI, the logs, your current setup. And that's going to develop a report that we're going to be able to share with you so you can figure out what you're actually using NetMRI for. One of the reasons this is important is because NetMRI is a tool that's been in a lot of places for many, many years. And it's quite possible that it's doing different use cases that you might not suspect it's responsible for.
One of the things I will mention, and that's a good point, Adam, but I will mention that although it does interrogate the data or interrogate your system, in order to do analysis of that system, of the functions that you're using, it's important to note that none of that data is taken off site directly. You have complete control. You can see visibility to what's there, and in fact, we provide capabilities to obfuscate any data that may be sensitive. So it's not only going to give you that information, but do it in a safe way. Now, maybe one of the things that we want to talk about briefly is just what are some of those functions that make up the NCCM solution. So, the first one that comes to mind there is discovery, just being able to go out to identify the devices that are on the network and pull back a collection of the information, detailed information about what the configuration. Adam, did you want to talk a little bit about, config backups and config management?
Definitely. The key, as you mentioned, one of the key pillars is, of course, discovery. You have to know it's there in order to make sure it's compliant and maintain it. But beyond that, there is compliance enforcement. So the ability to create gold standards, not just for internal standards around DNS and NTP, but also adhere to different technical standards that exist, like the NIST standard, CMMC, CIS, all these different specific regiments that you may need to adhere to depending on what vector or which industry that your company's in.
Awesome. And then the next thing, if those configuration policies are in place, is the ability to automate remediation around that as well, right? Whether it's scripted automations or whether it's configuration templates that are just automated to be sent out based around a failing compliance policy. Those are things that are likely in place or could be in place today that you definitely want to take a look at.
Exactly. And that's another key piece there, Mr. Jameson, is the ability to affect change in bulk. Of course, being compliant, being able to report on it in discovery is key, but realistically, a lot of the ROI from an NCCM does come from the ability to make change at bulk. If it's, like I mentioned, if it's something simple like a DNS or an NTP push, all the way to more advanced time-consuming operations like full OS upgrades.
Right. And then there's also, with all that rich discovered data that you get from the discovery and backup process, that's then available to sync to other systems, right? Whether it be the Infoblox DDI grid, which is built into it out of the box, or some of the other functionalities that are available for syncing to different platforms.
Indeed. IPAM is, sorry, go ahead, Mr. L.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point that you bring up, because when you're looking at the impact that taking a specific tool out of your environment poses, you really need to look further than just the functions that the product provides directly. It's those integrations to other systems that you want to be aware of, because they're going to be impacted once the tooling is removed.
Mm-hmm. One key feature actually that is commonly used is something as simple as switch port management. Depending on your business, that might be something that you don't do that often, but a lot of our clients will have that same operation done up to 100 times a day. So depending on your specific use case, you really want to understand what you're using it for, and you want to make sure that when that tool eventually does be removed, you're not replacing it with manual labor.
Awesome. Great input. Any other functionalities or features that we think NetMRI might be being leveraged for today, guys?
I think the ITSM would be another one outside of IPAM and just your day-to-day activities, is the capability to generate different tickets. And of course, with that authoritative discovery, populating a CMDB is another very large use case that we see our NetMRI clients currently use it for. Making sure a CMDB is evergreen and accurate is a very difficult task on its own. So an NCCM is definitely a key pillar in that.
Right. So even for the customers that have NetMRI and may think that it's not actually in critical impact, may not be in critical functions, it may actually be feeding that data to systems that are actually in critical paths for other users. Mm-hmm. Good to know. Well, I think the question then is, okay, so now we understand what an NCCM is and that NetMRI does in fact have an end of life announced. What do we do about it, guys? What are the options moving forward from here?
Well, so circling back, as Adam was talking about our ability to provide tooling to help you understand what specific functions you're using, that's sort of step one. But let's maybe go down the path of looking at some of the outcomes of that analysis and what you would follow on with. So we talked about the idea that one of the core functionalities is just the identification, discovery of devices, and pulling of asset information. If that is the case, the recommended path for upgrade or for replacement of NetMRI would be to move to one of the other info solutions that are focused on discovery and asset management. And that is one of two things, either network insight or asset insight. These are two slightly different slightly different tools, one on-prem, one in the cloud. Both of them are focused on discovery and collection of data and using that information in order to enrich the data that's already available in the rest of the Infoblox suite.
Understood. Awesome. So Asset Insights is a relatively new product. That's something that we can help them out with as well, if there's any interest in having that conversation, of course.
Indeed.
What about
just to kind of
config backup? Oh, sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just to kind of draw a demarc there, Asset Insights is the newer discovery mechanism, part of the universal DDI offering by Infoblox. So that one's going to be more of a cloud-based discovery. And either way, it's really exciting to see. It's a great product. It's really shaping up well. But beyond that, sorry, I was going to say beyond that, Network Insights is more of your traditional on-prem discovery that we're used to seeing.
Gotcha. So if they are using configuration backups to actually store all of the configuration changes for the various network infrastructure devices, what kind of options do we think we have then, guys?
Yeah, I think that's where things get a little bit more or a little more interesting, because there are certain functions that are part of NCCM that Infoblox will not be providing in any of their tooling going forward. Specifically, those are things like the config backup that Adam had talked about, the compliance checking, and the job automation components that Jesse was referring to. In those cases, we really need to look at an alternate NCCM tool, and the one that we are recommending is Encompass. Maybe I'll leave it to Adam and Jesse to talk a little bit more about Encompass.
Definitely. Encompass, as was mentioned before, we've been working with an NCCM solution, mainly Infoblox's NetMRI, for many, many years now. Through that time, we've learned which use cases are the most important to our clients, whether it's device backup, whether you're looking for compliance or job automation. The Encompass NCCM solution is something that we're rolling out that does the really basic things very well. Whether you're dealing with free or busy IP addresses, backing up devices, or making change in bulk, the Encompass solution is going to allow you to do that. We've chosen that particular solution and developed it in-house because it offers some really good strengths. It offers an incredible scalability with very light resources. Beyond that, we're also offering it as a cloud solution. After many, many years of dealing with different NCCMs, we've learned that it can be hard to do the care and feeding on your own for these systems. So what we're going to be delivering to our clients through Encompass is going to be all the use cases that you're used to with NetMRI, but the differences are going to be we're going to deal with the care and feeding, and we're going to be hosting that for you within our cloud.
Awesome. Anything else that we wanted to add around the Encompass solution there?
There's some other things we're doing. We're doing some really interesting things around reporting, for instance. Common use case or common conversation we have with a lot of our clients is, they'll say they've got 40 CVEs or P-certs or vulnerabilities. This week, they patch them, and then the next week, they've got 40 CVEs or P-certs. Sometimes it can be hard to articulate to leadership the amount of effort involved in that, because usually they'll just see the summary reports. They'll see, okay, we've got 40 this week, we've got 40 next week, and they don't necessarily see all the hard work and teams and the KPIs involved with that. So on top of the NCCM, we're also embedding a very rich reporting feature set that's really going to concentrate on those key KPIs that you need to understand that you're making sure you have a compliant network and that you're doing the good work over periods of time. Of course, we're going to offer reporting on the classical stuff you'd see in an NCCM, vendors, different device counts, that type of information, IP information, but we're really going to focus on the business metrics that are important to you as well.
Awesome. And one note to call out is the customers that are leveraging that integration with NetMRI to the Infoblox DDI grid today. The goal and the expectation is that solution, the Encompass solution, will provide that same integration functionality. So we will be able to still populate all of the discovered data, all of that rich data into your IPAM systems as well.
Mm-hmm. And just one of the things to concentrate on, at least from an Empowered Networks point of view, we've got the same consultants, we've got the same deep engineering bench and the same expertise, and we're going to be here to support them through their transition to a newer NCCM, first and foremost by discovering their current use case. Maybe they just need discovery and they can just move over to the Infoblox solution. But if they need those more classical NCCM use cases, we're going to have our expertise here to help them.
Awesome. So I know that we're going to open it up to questions, and obviously people are going to have a whole bunch of good Q&A questions for us, but anything else that you gentlemen wanted to add before we do so?
Just back up, Adam, that we're here to help. Please reach out. We're throwing a lot of information out at you today around what's going on. Please reach out to us. We can interact with you personally, help you figure out exactly what you're using today, how you're using it, and help you gauge the impact and make some plans on how to move forward. But with that, maybe let's move over to the questions.
Awesome. Yeah, let's start off with the questions.
Yeah, so thank you all again. As we move to the Q&A, I encourage you to submit your questions via the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Thank you.
So looks like a few questions have popped in here. First one, if I decide to migrate to one of the options that you mentioned, how do I go about doing that? That is a great question. You guys want me to take that, or one of you want to field it?
After you, sir.
Yeah. So at Empowered Networks, and I'll take this one just because at Empowered Networks, I actually have responsibility for the professional services organization, and I can say that we do offer professional services in order to help the migration from NetMRI to whatever your solution is. So that includes, whether that's going over to Encompass because you're a traditional NCCM user, but also if you're going to be moving, if you're in that discovery space and you're going to be moving to one of the discovery tools that Infoblox provides, we can absolutely support that move. Again, get in touch with us. We'll talk about your specific use case, and we have solutions that we can apply there.
Awesome. Looks like a bunch of questions coming in here now, Mr. L. The next one I think is, how is Asset Insights different from Network Insight? Why would I look at one over the other? Do you want to answer that, Adam, or you want me to grab that one?
No, after you, sir.
Yeah, so Network Insight is going to be the more kind of traditional on-premise discovery tool that's been available through the DDI solution for many years. It is available to connect directly to the grid as a grid member. Does discovery using things like SNMP and SSH access to your various on-prem devices. Asset Insights is kind of the evolution of that. That's taking all of that great, rich ability as far as discovery on-prem, extending that to be able to do things like cloud discoveries and bring it all into a single central point within the Infoblox portal. So if you're not familiar with the Infoblox portal, that's going to be their SaaS solution that provides the universal DDI as well as a series of other solutions. But this is a portion that ties directly into that Asset Insights piece and brings the data in there. If you're looking to just manage your on-prem NIOS grid, again, that Network Insights piece would be the more traditional piece there.
I'll just add one interesting thing is that the Asset Insights actually can consume information from Network Insight as part of its collection. So, as Jesse talked about, being able to collect information across the cloud, to be able to reach out into areas that traditionally there hasn't been a whole lot of focus on, particularly OT devices and IoT devices, as well as a lot of the cloud stuff that is, we'll say more, not cloud, but some of the things like Juniper Mist and Meraki, the systems that maybe weren't as strongly supported with some of the traditional solutions, those are very well supported with Asset Insights. And then the fact that you can bring Network Insight info into Asset Insights to have a consolidated view means that there actually is a use case in which both Network Insight and Asset Insights may exist in the same environment.
Very good point, sir.
Excellent. And I've got another question here. I've been using NetMRI for lots of policies and rules for years and rely on it daily. How hard would it be to migrate those to Encompass? That's something that we've specifically created some tools to assist you with. So it's the language between the both of them are slightly different, the way the rules are written. But we do have tools to assist you doing that, depending on how many different rules and policies you have in place. So for instance, if it's the classical DISA-STIG, NSA type rules, those rules will be included with Encompass. But if they're your own gold standards, those are something we can definitely help with. There's tools that we have to help kind of get you 99% of the way there through the migration. Beyond that, it's not difficult at all to kind of recreate those. So it's a good question. We've got tools to assist to really speed that process up. And beyond that, it's not that hard, depending on how many you have, to kind of just flip them over to the new system. But the classical ones you're used to, DISA, STIG, NSA, those will be included.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, I was just going to say, so we did have a comment about, again, sort of that difference between Network Insights and Encompass. And I just want to delineate that again, that if your use case is around discovery, and this is something that we can help validate through the use of the NetMRI analysis tool, but if your use case is around discovery, we want to be really clear that your migration path, the best migration path for you is to move to one of the existing Infoblox discovery solutions. So either the Network Insights or the Asset Insights solutions. The Encompass is where you have use cases that are specifically around the classical NCCM components of either config backup, compliance around those backups, or pushing out change automation. So hopefully that clears up the difference between the two pathways.
And just to keep up with some of these, I'm going to kind of shoot some of the smaller, shorter answers really quickly here, just to try and get some of them off the list. How will Encompass be licensed? Encompass is going to be a SaaS service. It's going to be licensed by the number of devices, so very similar to NetMRI, that you'll be purchasing packs of the licensing, and that will be distributed across your instance. Like I mentioned, it is a SaaS service, and that would be something that would be a subscription base. Another question that was tied to that one was, will Encompass be able to import the NetMRI database, or is the plan to perform a new discovery? Actually, with Encompass, there are options. I know with NetMRI, you were limited to only devices that are discovered or brought in. You actually have either option. If you'd like, we can definitely work with you to take a export of the IP addresses and bring that into the Encompass system. But there is absolutely a discovery functionality, very similar to NetMRI, SNMP, SSH-based discovery processes there. And I attended late. What is the end of life, end of sale date? Just really quickly, just to reference those guys again. So the end of life announcement was October 10th. Just recently, you would have seen that come out. Last order date for the products, the last date you can purchase things like subscriptions for, would be April 30th, 2025. And then the actual end of life is going to be April 30th, 2027.
Perfect. Another just quick one. Do we have any reference links to Network Insights, Asset Insights, and Encompass for us to review further? The answer is yes. We will reach out to the people that are attending this presentation, and we'll provide some information after the presentation is complete.
Awesome. And just one here too as well. Will Encompass capture the hardware inventory, line cards, modules, power supplies? The answer is yes. It's something multi-stack switches, you're going to be able to see all the different parts, the fans, and you're going to be able to get all the serial numbers for all the different parts in the multi-stack switch. But the answer to that question is yes. It's not just going to discover the device, it'll discover all the hardware that makes up the device. And just another one here, Encompass does support IPv6. So the offering itself, it is a cloud offering. So we'll be hosting the solution, the heavy lifting part. But that being said, you still have a discovery node in your environment that's able to interact with it. It is completely compatible with IPv6. There's no issues there at all.
Starting to keep up with the questions now. Next one looks like is Encompass able to share discovery data into ServiceNow CMDB? I know Empowered can help do this with NetMRI because I was looking at adding this functionality soon. Yeah, so the short answer is yes. Actually, that's one of the core tenets of the Encompass solution, is making sure that it's going to be a good team player within the ecosystem. So those integrations are actually by design going to be put into the Encompass solution as part of kind of a tier 1 implementation. So CMDB integrations, as well as integrations with tools like Tenable for security scans and a whole series of different options. And if you're looking for a specific integration, now is a great time to reach out to us to talk to us about that as we actually start to scope some additional ones as well.
Yeah. Now, again, I'm going to throw in, just so people are clear, if really you're looking for just that discovery functionality, our recommended path for migration actually isn't to Encompass. It's to one of the existing Asset Insights or Network Insight. And to that point, there are mechanisms we can help you with the getting the data from those discovery systems into your ITSM system, into your CMDB as well. So I would say just in general, if you're using NetMRI today as a source of discovery information that you're using to keep your CMDB evergreen, regardless of which path you ultimately end up going down, absolutely that is supported.
I think we got time for probably one more question. I'm going to pass this one to you, Mr. L, to finish it out here. If I decide to migrate to one of the other options, how do I do that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, Empowered has been working with NetMRI for 15 plus years. We're super familiar with it, and as has been pointed out, we're super familiar with the entire NCCM space, as well as the integrations into other systems. We will have professional services to help you migrate from where you are today to either, any of the outcomes, whether that's to the discovery solutions that are provided by Infoblox or to the NCCM solutions that are complemented by Empowered Networks offerings. But in all cases, we have professional services offerings that will help you with that. Reach out to us, as I said before. We have personal conversation with you, figure out what your requirements are, help you with that decision on which direction to go. But then, absolutely, we can help with the migration process and making sure that you're able to carry your full functionality going.
Awesome. So I think we're coming up on time there. Don't know if there's any other questions. It looks like it's starting to die off a little bit. Thanks again, everyone, for joining and all of the wonderful questions. And as Mr. L mentioned before, if there's additional follow-up questions, you want to have a conversation about anything we spoke about today, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to continue the conversation and help out where we can.
Absolutely. And Jesse, thank you for that. For everyone, again, if you do have further questions, I encourage you to reach out to your account executive. Alternatively, please reach out to empowerednetworks.com. We'll receive your note, and then we'll respond to you within 24 hours, and we can schedule a follow-up conversation. And again, really appreciate you all joining us today. Thank you so much. And thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you for your time. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.